Okay, hi. So this is the Drupal usability meeting for September 5th, 2017. And we have two proposed topics to talk about the goals for Drupal 8.5 and ideas on how we could use example content for Layout Builder. With the roadmap then, or the goals rather.
All right, so should I kick in?
Yes.
All right, welcome everyone. I'm WebChick. We today are talking about issue number, uh-oh, I have a crying child. Maybe Emily could talk about her thing, and I'll be right back.
Okay, I'm gonna actually grab a power cord really quick, and then I will be right back. Okay, there we go. All right, so I have some example mockups for Layout Builder, and I'm going to start screen sharing them. Okay, so this we went over last week on the UX call. Let's see. So this is an example of how Layout Builder could work replacing the current field layout UI. So this is without example content, so you have just the field names, and each of these rows is a section. And so this is a 3-column section, this is a 1-column section, and so on. So that's an example of how that could work without example content. So here is an idea for how this could go with example content. So with a title or with any text that would appear with the example content larger and the field name smaller, and content could be added to a section and seeing examples in the right-hand settings tray.
I guess the only thing, this is great. The only thing wrong, quote unquote wrong with this is that I can tell you what people are gonna expect is they're gonna expect to see content in their front end theme because they're ultimately laying out how this is gonna look on the front end, right?
Yeah, and because we don't necessarily know what front-end theme content's going to be displayed in, I wasn't sure exactly what we could do about that.
Right. Because, could you flip back to the other example real quick?
Mm-hmm.
Because, yeah, this is, you know, it's fine. It's better than what we've got currently because you can at least visibly see things going next to each other and stuff like that. But it is an abstraction, which is kind of nice because if you get into the example content one, I don't know. I mean, it'd be interesting to run it past people and see what they think, but I worry that they would be confused about why it looked like, it didn't look like quote unquote their site. You know what I mean?
I mean, an alternative is that we could actually have people do, that we could have people select a theme to view it rendered in somewhere on the page.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Like, you know how there's like a block preview that we have on the block screen?
Mm-hmm.
That to me seems like what people would actually want. So they lay it out in an abstract way, and then there's a preview button of some kind. And then the preview button, though, instead of rendering it in 7, like the 7 theme, it would render an example content with an example layout applied, but in whatever the default front theme is.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be a way to have our cake and eat it too, because it definitely helps tremendously to know what it is you're actually laying out. Because otherwise, like, I mean, some of them are pretty straightforward, like publication dates, pretty straightforward. But body text, you don't necessarily know what body text is, because that's what Drupal calls that field, not necessarily what you would call that field as a content author or whatever. So
yeah, and I mean, this is a good example because this is, let's see if I can add this quickly. This is based off the Umami design for the Out of the Box initiative. And for example, the is actually 2 of
You're cutting out for me, or else I'm cutting out.
Yeah, same here.
Darn.
Emily's cutting
the
out.
actual theme.
Oh, you're back. Emily, you missed like maybe the last minute of what you said.
Oh. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you, but we can't see your screen anymore for some reason.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Okay, we're back.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like my internet connection's having some trouble. So I was just saying this is a good example where it'd be really helpful to have the theme preview.
Bah. Missed again what you said for about the last 30 seconds or so.
Okay. Yeah, so I was just saying that I think this would be really helpful for, it would be really helpful to have that preview of the theme just because of how different it could be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just getting all kinds of flashbacks from usability tests we've done, and people are like, yeah, but what does it look like on my site? Like that phrase comes up all the time because people they associate this, but for better or worse, as a back end, like separate from their website. Even though we know it's not, it's like that's how it's perceived. And so, but anyway.
We also have issues with previewing content in the new theme experience, right?
Say that again, Gabor.
We also have issues with previewing content in the node in the admin theme. Same problem or similar problem.
Yes, although we shouldn't anymore because we do have, for nodes anyway, we have node preview. Now this gets trickier when you're into like previewing custom blocks and stuff like that, but for a node preview, we presumably could hook into the same system as the current node preview. We just have to pre-populate it with some dummy content if there's no content available.
That's the other question is that, so this has some sensible content because I guess you already have some nodes that you can pull data from or some entities, but what happens if you don't? Fields that don't necessarily have content yet in entities.
Well, but I think
Yeah, so this is based on the idea that we would actually have some idea of example content in core that you fill out for every content type, because I know the out of the box initiative, I think, is trying to do that too. So this would all be created when the content type is set up.
that's cool. If we can get that concept in, that sounds really beneficial. So then, in other words, this content that we're looking at here, this wouldn't be the example content for all Drupal sites of all time. This would be whatever the site builder filled in when they first created, excuse me, the content type. So in other words, it would be specific to their site and their use case and stuff.
Yep.
That's cool.
Yeah. Cool.
What's the third image? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, that's after.
Yeah.
This is after the header image is placed. So that's if someone did the add content and then placed that block here. And then that shows that.
Yeah, I really like that because it's, particularly with the header image, it's pretty striking how much of a difference it is between this and the first image that you showed. But I do think that it could always be a later enhancement, but I do think that people would want to see this in their actual like front end theme. So it could always be like a later enhancement that we add a preview button there or something like that. So.
Okay.
But anyway, I like it. +1. Too bad Roy is not going to make this meeting, but it would be great to know what is going on with that initiative in terms of how they're planning to get it implemented. Like, you know, is there going to be a big, you know, kind of like what the documentation team did to get like the handbook done, which was a similarly huge undertaking, was kind of split things up into like 100 sub issues, and then excuse me, a lot of traveling this weekend. Then you know, at sprints and stuff like that, they could start chucking, you know, here you do this issue, here you do that issue, and stuff like that, and eventually it got done. So it would be neat to know what the plan is for the out of the box initiative regarding, now that the designs are looking fantastic, and we're starting to see, like, I think once that initiative is in a place where it's in core in some form, we're going to see like a really awesome shift. Like, I noticed like we're currently getting like slides ready for Dries' keynote and stuff. And something that's nice in a keynote is to show Drupal functionality against something that's not just like default Drupal 8 plus Bartik ugliness. And so it makes it so from now on, or like once that initiative's in, it's like, oh, just install, you know, the demo content thing and use it from there. You know, it's just like, it's exciting to see this stuff happen. But I guess I'm not sure what the plan is for implementation and how that thing is planning to be split up. And I'm not sure if either of you two know either, but.
No, the last thing I saw about implementation was just that there's a push to try and find people in Vienna.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Hopefully that. Well, there you go. If you're coming to Vienna, go find the out of the box people and make this pretty thing happen, because it's going to be amazing. Okay, awesome.
Pretty awesome, yeah.
All right, I think I can present. We'll see how far we get out with this. But now I need to find my stuff again. Okay, here we go. So I'm gonna do put a screen sharing situation as well. Okay, so I'm Webchick, and I'm one of the product managers for Drupal, as is Gabor, but Gabor is just back from fraternity leave, so I'm guessing this might be new information for you. I don't know, but anyway, we got together with the other core committers as well as the initiative teams and various other folks working on big important stuff for Drupal, and we came up with this list of proposed product goals for Drupal 8.5 and 8.6 and beyond. This is at node 2905741. So I'm just going to kind of talk through this document. Obviously, you can read it, so I won't go into all of the details, but all of the various disclaimers apply. This is not like a list of things that are definitely going to happen in 8.5. These are a list of things that people working on Drupal have said they think they can get done in 8.5 or not, and then it's postponed to 8.6. It's still a duocracy, reviews still apply, all that kind of stuff. Sorry, honey, can't right now. Don't know. So the priorities are laid out, and something that's new this time around based on the discussion that's happening down below is I added a section for what I call community challenges. So these are not new features that we want in Drupal core necessarily that would more rightly belong on a product roadmap, but they are things that the community is raising as pain points for them. Some of which play into other initiatives and some of which don't. So we'll talk about that in a second. So these are laid out in priority order. Migrate's number 1 because it's blocking Drupal 8 adoption, so that's pretty important. Media is number 2 because it's sort of a big missing piece of functionality compared to our other competitors. API first is 3rd because that doing that really well sets us up for the next 10, 15 years of Drupal awesomeness. People building decoupled applications on Drupal, people being able to use Drupal as a content store, all kinds of different utilizations and stuff like that. Layouts is the next one. Stuff that Emily was just showing looks really fantastic, and that team's making great progress. Workflow is the next one, who made tremendous progress towards the end of the 8.4 cycle. So we're still kind of up in the air in what format content moderation and such will be shipping, but anyway, a lot more stable in 8.4 than it was in 8.3 for sure. Outside in is another one. That's the concept of configuring your site from the front end instead of having to trawl your way around in the back end for things. And then out of the box, the initiative we were just talking about, which gets us the demo content, demo theme, making Drupal look really, really nice out of the box. And then in addition to that, we have some community-driven initiatives. I just found the one PHP unit that has kind of all the tick marks next to it of a team of people, not just one person, got together. They put a plan together. That plan got marked RTBC by community feedback, and then also the core committers signed off on it. So community challenges is another place to put things that aren't quite baked yet. So with that overview, migrate can best be summarized as what we want to do is we want to get migrate done for 8.5 ideally. And unlike other elements of the roadmap, or sorry, the product goals, any time that the migrate module at all is deemed stable, we're just going to mark it stable in whatever branches. So even though everything else in 8.5 needs to wait till it's released in March 2018, the rest of it, these might get marked stable sooner. We'll have to see. So it's through this. So the rest of these basically is mark the migrate module stable, mark the migrate Drupal module stable. That's the one that provides the 6 to 7 and 6 to 8 and 7 to 8 migration paths, and then mark the UI stable. And these all link to issues where you can find out more information about that. And then for 8.6, they are planning on adding the migrate tools to Drush, because right now, in order to use Drush with migrate, you have to actually download a contributed module, and that's not completely obvious to most people, so that's just like a nice usability enhancement. And then we've also talked about adding rollbacks and incremental migrations to the UI. You can do those from the API if you use Drush just fine, but the UI would be nice to be able to do that as well. So that's currently what's in the slotted for migrate. For media, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes work that needs to happen. So we added a new media API in 8.4, which is stable, yay! But now we have to move everything and contribute to make use of it. So there's a big crowdsourcing effort happening here for that. They also want to make it so that media has parity with the file and image modules in stable core, And I believe as part of this is also making media the default out-of-the-box thing that you use to upload images and files and stuff, instead of the file and image modules would be deprecated at that point. And then to get a nice user-facing functionality in there, since we don't really have anything with these other two, would be O-embed support. So this would allow people to upload YouTube videos and that kind of thing that have external providers, which would be really nice, because currently Drupal core anyway doesn't handle video, which is kind of seen as one of the main pillars of media handling. So. And then that would lead into a media library, which all of us on the product management team would love to happen much sooner than 8.6. But the existing team doesn't have bandwidth for it, so this would need someone to come out from the curtain and do some work on this, as well as more advanced WYSIWYG integration, metadata improvements, and this kind of thing would be targeted for next year. API first, there's a whole ton of stuff under here, all leading to hopefully being able to put JSON API in core. This is sort of like an agreed upon standard that a lot of decoupled applications are being built against right now. And it would be wonderful for Drupal's adoption if we output it by default as well. There is a JSON API module in contrib. It was marked stable during the 8.4 cycle, so we'll have to see how that goes. But then there's a bunch of things underneath that, in particular calling attention to config entity support. This makes it so that your decoupled application can work with taxonomy vocabularies, content types, other things that are not content on the site. And then file upload support is another one that's been kind of a big piece of missing functionality that hopefully will get buttoned up in 8.5. That would be really good. Okay. Layouts, custom landing pages, which involves adding a layout builder to core, and then what Emily was just showing is the sections-based UI for field layout as well. So not just the ability to create one-off custom landing pages, but also the ability to use that same sections-based UI on field displays as well, which would be great, because then people could do I want all of my articles to be laid out like this, as well as I want node 6 to be laid out like this, because it's a weird promotion we're doing or something. And then hopefully for 8.6, we're going to stabilize all of that stuff, and then get that same thing we can do with form display, sorry, field displays applied to the way that forms are done as well, and have form layouts, which would be pretty cool. Workflow, so if they don't get content moderation and workflows module to stable in 8.4, this will happen in 8.5. So they're heavily at work at this right now, so this is kind of a questionable one to see when exactly this happens. But that's number one, is get the workflow functionality. It's already in core to stability. And then they want to add the workspaces module, which is the ability to stage content changes between environments. So you can set up a scenario for if so-and-so wins the election, then we'd want to have this featured article and this front page news story and this sidebar block and that kind of thing. And the ability to stage all those as a collection of things would be really good. In order to do that, we need to make a lot more things revisionable than are currently revisionable. Right now, the main things that are revisionable in core are nodes or content. That's the key one that's revisionable. And we've also added some amount of revisionability to custom blocks in 8.4, which we plan to expand out. But we want to also make taxonomy terms, menu links, path aliases, many other things that would go along with these staged collections of content. And that will lead us into full site previews, undo functionality, parent revision support, conflict resolution, some more advanced workflow features in fall of next year. Outside in is pretty much just get it done. So we got all of this stuff, basically the settings stream module to beta, we hope, for 8.4. So this would be a matter of polishing it off and getting it to stable. And then we did add an experimental module called place blocks, which allows you to place blocks on the front end. And that unfortunately did not reach stability in time for 8.4, which was its deadline. So what we want to do instead is repurpose that as just a patch to the blocks module itself. Because there's basically no site currently using the blocks UI that wouldn't want the ability to do this from the front end. We know this is a really bad usability problem we hit every single time we do usability testing. So instead of a separate module, we just want to get this into core proper. So hopefully some folks will jump on that, because that would be a really great solution. So And then for 8.6 in the outside in, what we're hoping to do is kind of more unify the authoring experience. So right now we've got local tasks, contextual links, we have settings tray, we have in-place editing, we've got all these different ways of editing stuff. So the idea would be like, let's unify a few of those, or else develop real firm patterns about when to use what and that kind of thing. And then the out-of-the-box experience initiative, we've talked about that several times in these other usability meetings. This is making the default, not the default installation, sorry, but they're providing a demo installation that looks like this, where you have like, whoa, pictures of things and, you know, like descriptions of stuff and whatever. And actually giving you like a fully configured Drupal site out of the box so you can kind of understand what it is Drupal does. Because right now all Drupal does is, you know, kind of toss you into an empty site that says you don't have any content left, with a theme that's built specifically generically so that it can be used for anything. And therefore it is not a great representation of what Drupal can do. So I'm really excited about this one, and the team behind it seems really excited about it too. And then with the goal is to get that in as experimental in 8.5 and then stabilize it for 8.6, we hope. So in terms of other initiatives, so the PHP unit initiative is ongoing. They're in the process of converting all of the old simple tests away from that. They're in the process of getting us to use PHP unit more effectively and this kind of thing. There's also a number of things that have come up in the ensuing discussion below this. I'd say the top two that are coming up a lot, well, a more fully featured configuration management in core, that came up last roadmaps time, so that's still an issue. People are having challenges like, how do I you know, have my dev site have devel module installed, but my prod site doesn't. Now that module installation is all handled by CMI. So some challenges like that. There are solutions for these in Contrib, but there's a lot of different solutions and there doesn't seem to be one pure, you know, agreed upon way. And usually that's a good signal that we need to do something in core so that there isn't fragmentation in the ecosystem. Composer has come up a lot of times in the discussion here. I'd say there's a lot of people alarmed that while the developers in the Drupal community are jumping on Composer because it's a very useful developer tool, it's sort of leaving both non-developers as well as experienced site builders as well as developers who have a lot of Drupal experience but don't have Composer experience or don't use the command line or this kind of thing. And it's leaving them kind of in the dust, where if you want to use a module like address module because you're using Drupal Commerce, that suddenly requires you to kind of shift the entire way your site's built to doing it in Composer, which is a totally different paradigm than most people are used to. And it's sort of causing a bunch of consternation and concern. So both of these, what we're really hoping for is for somebody or somebodies to really sit down and figure out what are the problems that people are experiencing, what is required to get this to fixed, and then have the ensuing discussion in the Drupal ideas queue to get that to a plan that can be signed off on by committers. Because once we have plans that are signed off on, then we can start prioritizing them in the roadmap and that. There's also a bunch of other community initiatives that have been proposed. So Jennifer Hodgson proposing a help system overhaul, the idea of making this more topic-based than module-based, this kind of thing. Also creating, doing a bunch of changes to the admin IA to make it behave more nicely. That's an initiative that Rachel Norfolk and Clara are both undergoing. We also have removed the special behavior of UID1. This came up from a community member who is working on that, and extending the entity access system with a new grants API. This is something that has come over from the security side of things, is something that would definitely help increase the security of Drupal as well. So these are just some ideas. These are sort of like, help, we have a problem and we don't know how to solve it kind of things. The rest of these are like, hey, these are things that I think would be cool and I want to work on, but still don't have broad agreement on, or don't have a team behind them, or don't have committers sign off yet, one or the other. So yeah, that's kind of the overview of what we're currently discussing. I wanted really badly to shut down discussion on it tomorrow, September 6th. But it still looks like, I mean, we're at, I don't know, 30-something comments at this point. 50, there we go, 54 comments. So it looks like people are still actively discussing this. The other thing that's come up a lot is this idea of migrates. One of the problems with migrates not being complete is that there's a lot of contrib modules that aren't yet have their migrations done, and or there's also this bug where migrate UI basically scares the crap out of you and says there's a bunch of stuff missing even though there isn't. So we have to dig in more and figure out how much of that is legit and how much of that is just this bug. And if we fix the bug, then we make the situation a lot better. So that was a lot of words. Questions, feedback, comments on this? Everyone is now sleeping.
I guess you're not gonna shut up the discussion if we're just promoting it right now again. So
yeah, I don't think we can reasonably shut down a discussion. So I think what I might try and do on the committer meeting on Thursday is sign off at least on the ones that we already talked about. So these 7. And then we have Vienna coming up. So maybe at Vienna, try and get some clarity around some of the community challenges. And see if there can be some teams that come out of that would want to actively help contribute to those. So, because there hasn't been a lot of back and forth at all on the 7. The 7 are pretty solid. They're like, you know, these are the same, generally the same priorities we had for 8.4. I'd say like a third of what's in here is just get the stuff done we didn't get done in 8.4, done in 8.5. So that's pretty non-controversial. And then there's a few back and forths about, you know, for media, it was like, is the media library going to happen in 8.5 or 8.6? They ended up pushing it to 8.6 only because this is plenty of work for at least the existing team. So unless we get a huge influx of funding or other help, this is probably about all they can, that's how much they want to bite off for the next 5 months. And then with API first, there was some back and forth about whether or not to make JSON API a goal for 8.6 or 8.5. So what they decided to do is make it the last goal of 8.5, meaning they're not sure if it can totally happen in 8.5 or not, but they still want to at least attempt to target it for 8.5 because it would be a huge ecosystem booster if we got that done. But apart from kind of some back and forth like that, for the most part, all of these are exactly what the team said they could get done. So it's not like these are particularly contentious. It's just a matter of if the committer team feels they have capacity to focus on all of these things, and if not, growing that capacity or you know, doing some other project management-y kind of things to help these two. So. Any other comments or feedback? Otherwise, that's what I got. So I guess if you're watching this later and you haven't submitted feedback on this, but you have thoughts or ideas, particularly if you're willing to do some of the legwork to get this stuff in the ideas queue and through that process, which, speaking of which, we really need to write down that process. I know I have had that on my to-do list for like months. Right now, your best bet is basically to go to the Drupal ideas queue and find one of these that's in, component, in the active initiative phase, and more or less copy and paste what they're doing, because these are ones that have gone through the process, did get sign off from maintainers, and have, like, if we look at the REST API one, for example, just because they're at the top, it talks about what is their use case. We're trying to make Drupal 8's REST best in class, and it links off to all of the sub-issues that are required in order to make that happen, along with some headings and stuff to like help people understand, you know, why that thing is important or not, and that kind of stuff. So anyway, that would be my suggestion to you. If your pet issue and or problem isn't on this list of 7, that would be a really great thing to do, is to start that process now. because these roadmaps, it's not like we set them once and then never touch them again. Like we plan to, or surprise Gabor, Yora and I were talking about this, but we plan to reach out to initiative teams in mid-November and find out how all of these are going and then make adjustments then. So I think like basically once a quarter revisiting this and making adjustments to reality is probably a good thing in general. So if your thing is not ready for this time around, don't lose hope, because there's still plenty of other opportunities to get it on this list. And even if it's not on this list, it doesn't preclude you from working on it. These are just attempting to kind of draw visibility to the things that we know are happening, you know, so that more people help and people have some idea of what's happening and what to expect and these kinds of things. So yeah, that's what I would say. So that's it from me.
All right. So if we don't have any other topics, then we can close this meeting. Presenting the use of sample content and then for 8.5. And see you all next week.
We're good.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.